Can all join palms? And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for being here. Anyone here for the first time? Want to share why you're here? I kind of assumed that when I saw you, yeah. And that's it, it's just, that's all. It's her fault. We just want to know who to blame afterwards. When you run out of here and you're like, I can't believe you brought me to that crap. Anyone else here for the first time? Yeah. Yeah. Same response. I got nothing after that. Yeah. Cat bring you also or not?
Hi, I'm Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
And I am in the Open Heart Sangha, and I've been to Deer Park many times, and I miss being with people of like mind. And I met Bridget last weekend, and so I'm here.
Nice. Well, welcome. You think these people's minds are like yours? I know a lot of them. You don't want their mind. Yeah, it's rough. I love that. It's one of my favorite responses when people show up here and they say, like, I want to be around like-minded people. And I'm like, you don't know anything about these people. You know? Let alone, or say that again?
Anyone.
Or anyone. Yeah, I was going to say, let alone the guy leading this place, because you don't want this mind. This is torture. Yeah, it really is. So it's fun when we can see that stuff. Well, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, we hosted Open Heart's a beautiful practice. We hosted them for a few years. A lot of the Open Heart Sangha, which is, for those who don't know, is in the Deer Park tradition, Thich Nhat Hanh. They were meeting once a week at UU, and then they were looking a few years ago to meet a second time a week. And a lot of them already came to stuff here. So we were hosting them for about 3 years prior to the pandemic, and then we closed for a year and a half. So, but welcome, glad you're here. Anyone else for the first time want to share why they're here? Or anyone keep showing up, want to share why you keep showing up?
I'm here for the laughs.
For the laughs, I know it's comedy hour here, I try. I think if we're going to look at extreme suffering that we experience every single day of our lives, then we should be able to laugh a little bit too. Otherwise, this suffering thing just becomes too overwhelmingly depressing and miserable. You know, I mean, that was like, for those who are brand new to Buddhism, that was the very first thing he said. Life is filled with dukkha, suffering. And that just sounds terrible. You know? But that's the reality, that we experience a lot of discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. The word suffering, I think, is really not the best translation into the English language, because suffering sounds so heavy and really dramatic. And we do experience a lot of that in our lives, a lot of heavy suffering, heavy pain. But a lot of the struggles and challenges we face on a day-to-day basis are not so heavy. And so if we can begin to find the humor in just all this craziness in our heads, the things that drive us insane all day long, like most of them are just meaningless. Again, there are things that are very important that we should not overlook, and very serious trauma that a lot of people in this room have experienced, and those things are incredibly important. But I'm talking about the 90% of the other things that are going to piss you off today, are probably relatively meaningless on a grand scale. So to be able to find humor in the madness that we walk around with and that we carry, I think is helpful. Otherwise, it just becomes this like deeper sinking of misery and depression and sadness, and that's not a great way to live a life. So we figure out how to come out of that and how to just enjoy each moment, the good and the bad, regardless of what's going on, how to experience each moment exactly how it is, without the judgments, without the critiques, without the likes and dislikes, but just experience it, be present with it. And that's not easy. So we come together to sit and try to figure out how to do that. So, all right. And to those of you joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're all here. Thanks for joining. There's a chat box on your screen. You'll see somewhere. Feel free to say hello. So we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences, right? The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. You're not going to think nothing. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit and breathe. Please keep breathing. If you stop breathing, then it's just a lot of paperwork. So it's easier if you keep breathing through this practice. Posture, you want to be comfortable. It does help. If you're on a cushion, if you slide to the front third, pushing your stomach forward. If you're on a chair or bench or however you're seated, also trying to sit up straight, trying to really take yourself out of the posture that you were just in, if possible, and really just bringing yourself more to kind of an attention posture and an alert posture, not a posture that you're just going to like sink in and fall asleep. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means your leg hurts or whatever it is. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get every day. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. Many of you won't even make it home before you're disturbed. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation, Buddhist practice is not an escape, as many people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, this isn't going to fix that. I wish it would. It helps you recognize why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can then make changes to your life. This is direct perception into the present moment, seeing your life for how it is, and understanding the life that you've created in this moment. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment. That is the practice. Being fully aware and mindful of your thoughts, of your words, and of your actions. And that's all. And that's incredibly difficult to do. It can also be frustrating, or depending upon what your thoughts and words and actions are, because if you do spend all day long becoming aware of what you think and what you say and what you do, it might shock you a little bit. But that's the practice. To recognize we've all had a crazy journey up to this point, and it's been different for every single one of us. What I do find, going back to the comment earlier about like-minded people, what I do find around places like this, Buddhist temples, meditation spaces, yoga practices, whatever spiritual journey you're on or wherever you go, is that while the individuals in the space, their minds are completely different, there's an intention that's pretty common. Not for everyone, but for the most part, the intention is to find a way to be a kinder, gentler, happier person to yourself, kinder, gentler to yourself and to others. And to live your day with a little more kindness and happiness, peace of mind. That's what's common. And when you bring a bunch of crazy strangers together and you put them in a space where the focus is on trying to live a happier, peaceful life, beautiful things can happen. So, with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, whatever's on your mind. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for questions. And for those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere, so feel free to say hello or put your questions there, and I'll do my best to respond as well. So thoughts, questions?
Just going back to comedy hour.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
I love the joke about paperwork, by the way, breathing and paperwork. When you were going up to meditation, you said, do continue breathing, otherwise it's a lot of paperwork. So, nice comic touch.
Did I say that today?
Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Fresh material.
I feel like a football coach. I got to go back and watch the film.
Yes.
I have no idea what I said. Okay, great. Thanks. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it was good. So anyway, you started by talking about, or you at some point got to the difference between genuine trauma and suffering when you were talking about comedy hour, and then the kinds of discomfort and annoyance that
Yes, this I remember.
90% of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was wondering if it was possible that one of the reasons that Buddhist teachers or practitioners are often really funny is because in that second category, cultivating awareness of how we create our own misery is actually inherently absurd.
Yes.
And so it just brings you into this
Yes.
awareness of the human comedy.
Yes. Agreed. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just to kind of respond to that a little bit, and for those who maybe didn't hear it, the idea behind the difference between the 90, and again, I'm just making up these numbers, but the 90% of the things we do all day that annoy us and drive us crazy are somewhat meaningless and not that big of a deal, 6 weeks from now, versus maybe the 10% of things throughout our day that really are very heavy and traumatic and past trauma that we still carry today, things like that. And so what you're asking or really just commenting on is, if you wonder that the reason so many Buddhist practitioners or teachers really find a lot of laughter is because they see the absurdity of it all. And yes, for me, the greatest teachers that I've learned from laugh a lot. They laugh at everything. And most importantly, they laugh at themselves.
Because
And
that's your immediate awareness of this comic
yes,
situation
yes.
of creating your own misery.
I couldn't even tell you how much of my day having a thought and then pausing and saying, "You're such an idiot." But not in a judgment way, not in like a, poor me, I'm going to go crawl back into bed and cry, like laughing at the fact that after all these years of doing this stuff, I still have the same stupid thoughts.
Yeah.
But to me, the practice is, I don't want to say I've given up on no longer having those thoughts, but I definitely am not holding my breath for it. The practice is not acting on them. I think that's where the beauty of this practice lies, is recognizing that, there was some smart physics person said a body in motion stays in motion, right? Newton or something like that. Yeah. I see the thoughts very much that way, that if you've had, say, angry thoughts for 40 years, the odds of waking up one day and just having no more angry thoughts arise are pretty slim. But when those thoughts arise, can you see them for the absurdity, as you said, that they are? Laugh at them and do absolutely nothing about them. The problems are not our thoughts. I mean, they start there, but the real problems are, what do we then do with those thoughts? And can we be honest with ourselves and recognize, like, oh my God, I'm really angry at this. I'm really mad at that person because they did this. I'm really still holding on to this grudge because they said that 6 years ago. And they don't even know who I am anymore, but I'm still angry. And I just want to let you know I'm still angry. Like, I mean, it's absurd that we do these things to ourselves. I'm not minimizing maybe the potential value in the recognition of those things, but that they continue to torture us. There's a story, I know you've heard this, I'm sure, but for those who maybe haven't, about acting on thoughts, and then I may or may not come back to the absurdity part, but I think you get the point, is that years ago it was KPBS, it was a college student, 20 years old. It's one of my favorite stories. I tell it a lot. But I was doing meditation every Monday, and this kid, 3 weeks in, 20-year-old intern, came up to me and said, "Jeff, I figured out how this meditation stuff can help me." I was like, "Really? That's great. How's that?" And he said, "Well, I was at a party Friday night, and there was a guy there who was talking to my girlfriend, and it's like I was getting really angry. And I realized I was probably going to get into a fight. I should take some deep breaths and walk away." I was like, "That's great, man. What'd you do?" He said, "I hit him." And I looked at him and I said, "Congratulations." He was like, "Congratulations, I got into a fight." I said, "Yes, but there was progress. Because 4 weeks ago, you never would have stopped to recognize that you should walk away. You took your deep breaths, you realized you should walk away, and then you still hit the guy. That's progress." So catching those thoughts becoming aware of them and not acting on them is important. And yeah, I mean, Shinra Suzuki did, the Zen teachers, I mean, Tibetan lamas and teachers are always laughing at everything, and Zen teachers are always laughing at themselves. And I mean, it's silly, totally silly. Yeah.
I think this conversation just answered a question that I actually had.
Nice.
And that was, could you talk about the difference between sitting in being in compassionate presence with your pain versus just ruminating?
Yeah.
Because I saw or I read an equation this past week that said pain times resistance equals suffering. So I took that to mean if you resist your pain or all the stuff that's annoying, you're going to suffer.
Yeah.
At some point or some way. And if you sit in compassionate presence with your pain or your annoyance, you're going to mitigate that suffering. But then what's the difference between just ruminating about the stuff that's annoying and actually being compassionate? I think this conversation is that answer.
Definitely. Are you reading the Pema Chodron book?
I don't know. I've read some of.
Because she talks a lot about that.
Yeah.
There's an expression, I think it goes, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. You hear that a lot around Buddhist circles. And in Buddhist teachings, it's the teaching of the second arrow. Really, that the first arrow is, something goes wrong and we get angry. And then we're still angry, so now we're sad because we're angry. So now we're angry and sad. And then we're angry and sad, so we might as well be depressed. So now we're angry, sad, and depressed. And then we're anxious because we can't come out of our anger, sadness, and just be angry. So to sit, as you say, that kind of compassionate, really the teachings a lot talk about being the observer of the emotions and the thoughts as they arise, not seeing them as defining you or who you are, right? They're just emotions that rise and fall like ocean waves. That's it. And really all the Buddhist people who share stuff are just taking from every other Buddhist person who shares stuff. And, that's the beauty of it.
Like every artist.
Like every artist, yeah. I actually see Buddhist practice as an art. I mean, it is a philosophy and a way of life. It is a 2,500-year-old religion. It is all of those things. But I see it as an art form. Always have. Actually, that's a lie. I have not always seen it that way until somebody did it was a prison class. I've done prison work for 20 years. And there was a student who went to kind of do a paper on it and observe and follow for their college course, and said that observing meditation in prison was like watching art be created. And ever since then, and that was probably 15 years ago. So yeah, definitely observe it, watch it, but don't allow it to destroy you.
Something that came to mind when talking about like pain versus suffering was it kind of seems to me that like we could divide it as like pain is something that like happens, like a sensation, but the suffering is like the self-identification with that pain.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I think that's
yeah, definitely. And it does. It comes down to semantics, but I think in that regard that, pain, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, if I come up and punch you in the leg, which I won't do because, that'd be really mean. You'll feel the pain, but then what's your mental response to that going to be? And what's that suffering emotionally going to be on top of that? So yeah, it's a good way to look at it. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
So two things. First, thanks for the tip in the beginning when you were talking about posture. When you said if you're sitting, maybe get out of this position you were in. So I usually sit with my back against the chair. I didn't have my back on the chair, and it just gave me a whole different mindset. It was helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's actually, I don't typically say that, and I'm going to start because what happens is people sit down and they kind of just sink into like they're watching a movie.
Right. Yes.
And then if a movie is really bad and it's 10 o'clock at night, what happens? you fall asleep.
Right.
So I'm gonna go back to really trying to bring people to awareness and attention, not to just sit there and snooze for 20 minutes. So thanks for thanking me for doing that.
The other thing I wanted to say was, you know, you say a lot how this practice is not easy and it's hard and all that, and just thinking about, well, you know, some of my history, all the years of going to Zen centers and doing chanting and bowing and reading sutras and all of that, and that's lovely, but the real work is sitting and meditating, and there's just no way to get around that. There just isn't. Believe me, I tried. This is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, that's the, you know, the beauty of 2,500 years of Buddhist practice is you have different lineages and cultures and traditions, and the bowing and the chanting and the robes and the sutras and all that kind of stuff, which is really, for those who are into it, beautiful and fascinating and a wonderful form of practice. And as you know, all of that, and this is really just for everybody, all of that, the chanting and the bowing and the rituals and the offerings, that in and of itself is also really beautiful meditative practice and experience. But when you take all of that away, then what? When you leave the monastery, then what? When you leave the Zen center, then what? You know, how are you in traffic and in line at Starbucks, and when your latte doesn't have enough pumps of whatever in it, you know? Like that's, you know, there's no like Starbucks sutra. You know? So, yeah. Other thoughts, questions?
Thank you for leading. I've done meditation in the past. I did the Vipassana meditation, which was really hard. It kind of came down to people were betting because I'm a chatterbox, like, yeah, she's not gonna last. So it was more like, I'm gonna show you. But it was really hard, and I felt like it was more like physical suffering. And the mind, like my mind was constantly racing, and I really couldn't like sit and, you know, I enjoyed like the lectures at the end, but I didn't realize that with meditation, like you can be guided like you did. And it was really nice to like come back to that breath and just to have you lead and to remind, and for everyone's comments, thank you. Like what you guys were saying about suffering and being in your pain, but having compassion, and that's, there's something
Thank you.
great. So thank you so much.
I appreciate you sharing that. Are you referring to a Goenka, like a 10-day retreat, or are you just talking about like a Vipassana class that you
No,
went to?
I did the 10 days.
The 10-day, yeah.
Yeah, I did.
I thought that's what you meant when you said that. And then,
Sorry, yeah, I've done it because I was just trying to find my way and figure things out like most people, and it was really hard.
Yeah, it's great that you're eating.
Great, but it was hard. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, sorry. You go ahead.
No, that's it.
Yeah. I was just gonna say it's great that your ego like pushed you through it. The fact that they like had over/under bets on what's your name? Sorry. Summer, whether Summer would make it or not. Your friends are like, she's not gonna make it, so you're like, screw them. I'll show them I'm gonna do it, right? And that ego, like, it's an important part of practice early on. You know, especially for those of you who struggle with so many things about whatever it might be. Maybe people have judgment towards you. Maybe people think that like your new little meditation Buddhist thing is lame, or maybe you just want to be kind to somebody who thinks that you can't be kind, and you're like, screw you, I'll show you kindness, you know? And so that ego really does come out, but it's coming out with a beautiful intention. That's the thing. I mean, a lot of times in kind of Buddhist circles, people think because of the teachings of non-self that you're supposed to like go beyond your ego. Like, good luck with that. You know, so if somebody walks in and is like, I've gone beyond my ego. Well, that's the ego recognizing that, and that's a bunch of nonsense, right? So we have our egos, we have this identity, we have these things that drive us. But the question is, can we use them in beneficial ways? And for you, it was to push through a 10-day. For those who aren't familiar with their Essen Goenka, beautiful retreats, they do, actually I think they do 5-day, 7-day, and 10-day, or maybe just 7 and 10.
It depends where, like, you're as a new student, you have to do the 10-day, and then you can go back and do like a 3.
Okay, so you do have to do the 10-day first. Yeah, okay. So yeah, so it's 10 days of silence, and you're stuck with 10 days of yourself. And
you can't read, you can't, I mean, I was reading like the bottles on my shampoo. I realized that you weren't allowed to make eye contact with people. And I thought everyone was so mean because especially when we were friends to this day, I met her there and I would like go on the walking trail and make eye contact and she would like, she was so stuck. And then she's like, sorry, you're not supposed to make eye contact.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we're friends.
That's great. Yeah, it's when you can do things like that, you know, if you don't have 10 days, a lot of people don't have 10 days to kind of unplug. But when you can do things like that, even if it's like, I mean, we do a half day, we do a 4-hour silent thing. And that's torture enough for a lot of people. But when you can find yourself in times or experiences where you can do things silently, where you can do things, I mean, a simple thing you could do, which doesn't completely recreate a 10-day Vipassana retreat, but next time you go to lunch with a friend, you know, partner, loved one, whoever it might be, have the meal in silence with them across from you. And not because you're like angry and in a fight, you know? But like just sit silently with them and eat a meal and see what that's like. One, it'll be really weird, maybe potentially uncomfortable. And then eventually you might decide, wow, I like this. This was years ago. We did the Day of Silence retreat downtown with the college kids. And, you know, down there, much smaller space. And so we got into really detailed cleaning stuff. And there was like a 40-minute cleaning period. And one of the tasks was to clean the refrigerator. And so there were 2 students that were assigned to that task. And one of them, and then I would have them write kind of things afterwards, sharing their experience. And one of them wrote that they had never felt so connected to somebody doing something in silence as the 2 of them just cleaned out and in of this refrigerator. And it was such a beautiful kind of exchange, but we're so used to like just blah, blah, blah all day long. Nonsense, you know? So that's kind of what we sound like all day long. Other thoughts, questions? Thanks, Sam. I will keep. Sam commented that I should write a Starbucks sutra. And then I think Satyavas said, I wanted to be there, but life got the best of me today. Grateful for the moment with you all. So, and good morning to everybody else, Greg and others. Other thoughts, comments, meditation, much practice. Oh yeah, go ahead. And then I want to come back to self-compassion. Go ahead.
I never said it, but somebody said, those who know how to suffer know happiness.
That's great. Say that again, please.
Those who know how to suffer know happiness.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I think, and that actually ties into what I wanted to say, is that the self-compassion is super important. And I think the ability to be aware of our suffering when it's going on and, as you say, know how to. And to me, that just means how to be with it, how to have kindness and compassion towards ourselves when we're suffering. Because we know we are going to suffer. And the Buddhist teachings on impermanence is beautiful because if we know we're going to suffer and all conditioned phenomena is impermanent, what does that tell us about our suffering? It'll end. It'll go away. And then we'll be happy. Now here's the catch. As the Buddhist teachings on impermanence applies to all conditioned phenomena, what does that also say about our happiness? It'll end. So our entire life is just a cycle. Happiness, sadness, joy, sorrow, good, bad, right, wrong. It's just, this is it. And we use all of these words to define things. And then we think those things are real. And this gets into the kind of illusion that we're all stuck in. And this is the Buddhist teachings on duality. That we think those moments of emotions, of happiness or sadness, of joy or sorrow, are our entire lives. But it's just a moment. So if we can begin, going back to kind of my observer comment, and just observe these emotions as they arise, and not attach to them, and not as, you know, like an airplane that's flying over your head as it gets louder and louder and louder, and then it gets quieter and quieter and quieter. So allow the emotions and thoughts to pass overhead just like an airplane. Right? The mistake we make is we jump on that airplane and then we just keep running with it. So, what else? We'll do one more thought or question, comment.
Do you think the dog is suffering?
Do I think the dog is suffering? I don't know. I think the dog could be watching a basketball game and rooting for their team. I think the dog could be hungry. The dog could be outside and wants to be inside. Right? Maybe the dog is inside and wants to be outside. Maybe the dog is perfectly happy and just talking.
Thanks for all those options.
Yeah, I mean, but the reality is I have no idea.
Me either.
We don't know. Yeah. But, yeah. What else? Final thoughts, questions? Could be trying to tell us something. So, all right, we'll join palms as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Martin Green during his time of rebirth. May Martin's family and friends be free from pain and suffering. So a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thank you all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. We have different practices going on every night from different unenlightened folks leading different Buddhist traditions. We have quite a large recovery sangha, so anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, that meets a few times a week. Family sangha just finished up this morning. They'll take a break for the summer. They'll do a couple kind of social gatherings, but for the most part, the family group will pick up again in the fall. And then we have we started this in January, but a social sangha, which we have started planning events once a month for people that want to, get together and do something outside of here. So that there's a little flyer on the wall out there. They're getting together tomorrow it's a hike. I forget exactly where, but it's up there on the wall. Or just go to the website and look up social sangha. But that meets about once a month. And does something outside of here. So if you're kind of wanting to connect with other like-minded folks and want to go hiking, that's available as well. Other than that, nothing out of the ordinary. Thanks everybody for being here and taking care of the space. If you want to stick around, there's a list by the door of stuff to clean or help out. And there's our usual Felipe and Kat. I don't know if you're sticking around today, if you roped them into that also. But there's some gardening going on outside if anybody wants to stick around and garden. So thanks all for being here. Please be safe on your way out. Buddha for You is downstairs and open if you need anything. Thanks all. Sam, I'll get working on that Starbucks sutra.
Yeah.